Now, another important question for us to ponder. Who was it that received the Holy Spirit? Who was it that saw everything that happened on that amazing day? The answer is in verse 5. Now there were staying in Jerusalem religious Jews from every nation under heaven. Then we get a representative listing of just where all these religious Jews hailed from. But please note, only Jews saw what happened. Only Jews received the Holy Spirit. There is no Gentile representation mentioned or implied. Why were all these Jews present at Mount Zion? Because the pilgrimage festival of Shavuot required it of them. And note also the addition of the adjective religious to describe the Jews that had come. It wasn't much of a journey to come to Jerusalem for local Judean Jews, nor was it all that hard for Galilean Jews. But for Jews who came from distant places, it disrupted their lives for weeks in a major way. It was quite costly economically for them. So the several millions of Jews who weren't all that religious didn't come. Only the most devout. Now obviously they weren't all standing on Mount Zion when this incredible visual display and this loud, rushing, roaring noise erupted. There were too many Jews in town for them to be all at the same place. But verse 6 explains that this noise was so loud that others around the city heard it. And so they walked towards where it seemed to be coming from. Their reaction was bewilderment, or as our complete Jewish Bible says, confusion. And why were they so bewildered? Because they were hearing the words spoken each in their own distinct language. So these bewildered religious Jews weren't in denial of what was happening. They just didn't know what to make of it. This short list of nations that these Jews came from is meant to be representative of the many nations and provinces that formed the Roman Empire. Certainly the Jews of the diaspora were present in virtually every nation of the empire, but there were greater concentrations in some of the nations than in others. Notice how Egypt is mentioned, for example. Philo, who lived at the same time as Jesus, reports that over 1 million Jews lived in the city of Alexandria, Egypt. 1 million. Almost none of these visiting Jews that we're reading about here in Acts even spoke Hebrew. And a major portion of Israeli Jews can't speak Hebrew. There is a concerted effort in modern Israel to teach the many Jewish immigrants in the land to speak Hebrew. Instead, they live in ghettos, and they continue to speak Russian and Ukrainian and Ethiopian and Polish and German and French and so on. Now, although some of these visiting Jews were awestruck at this incident of the languages, others of them mocked it. But to be sure, their mocking was as mocking usually is, sarcasm and not a very intelligent response. The accusation, think about this, the accusation that the believers were drunk and that's how they could speak all these languages is a bit irrational. No doubt, I think it was meant to be a little bit humorous. Part of what made this event so difficult for this crowd of Jews to comprehend is that it was apparently quite well known just who these 12 disciples were, who they represented, and where they were from. Most of them were country folk from the Galilee. They weren't learned intellectuals. It's a little like the way rural Midwesterners in the USA are looked down upon by residents of New York City and Washington, D.C. They assume that the only intelligence that exists is among themselves. Many in that crowd were incredulous that Galileans could possibly be so multilingual.